You know, it's November and it still feels like it's this weather outside.
That's because it is this weather outside.
When am I actually going to get fall? Texas is not going to
Never.
Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's do it. Hello and welcome to Talk Heathen! It's November 8th, 2020, Season 4, Episode 45. I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm Vi La Bianca.
Hey, V, how's it going?
It's going really well this week.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
It's a nice week, Eric.
I couldn't imagine why.
No, there's just a change in the air.
There is. On an entirely unrelated note, thank you for voting.
Yes. You did a good thing by voting.
Mm-hmm. Entirely unrelated, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we have a couple of announcements.
Yes.
I would love to dive into some of the general ones, and then I know that we had have a special announcement that came in because of an email from earlier.
Yes. So general first?
Sure, no problem. So first off, hey, this is Talk Heathen. This is a product of the atheist community of Austin. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. And if you like what we do and you want to support our mission of continuing to push for compassionate atheism and the separation of religion and government, consider supporting us. There are different ways to do so. You can, for instance, go to patreon.com/talkheathen to me. And if you are one of our top 5 patrons, we'll thank you 2/3 of the way through the show. I have Patreon up. I refresh it and I do that. You could also become a member in the YouTube live chat, and you can also donate because this is actually, let's focus on this really quick. If you want to be a member, you can see on the screen exactly how to do that. Here's the thing. We need volunteers. We have plenty who are doing a lot of work, and our volunteers are continuing to put in long hours, but we also want to be able to give people time off.
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And because of that, it can get tough. So right now the live chat is on members only mode. If you want to be in the live chat today, because we don't have the coverage, consider becoming a member. Also, any donations that were made, because this is a nonprofit, go directly to the ACA. YouTube does not take a cut like it normally does with those kinds of things. So donations like that are seriously appreciated.
Yeah.
Blah.
Also, you get to learn some fun new skills. I remember when I first got to the ACA, I did a lot of work behind the camera with the rest of the crew.
You did.
And we have some really talented people who will walk you through how to do like audio engineering and then video production. It's quite impressive.
It's funny when people would come to Austin and say, "Hey, I'm moving to Austin. I want to, be around the ACA." One of the first lines we'd say is, "Good, we're going to put you to work." And that just reminds me now I kind of have to gush just a little bit. We're so proud and excited to hear about Jenna Belk's announcement that she's pregnant, and it's amazing.
That's so sweet.
The very first time she came to the ACA, she called in just to say, "Hey, I like the shows." And I said, and she said, I'm also in Austin. I said, "Why don't you come down?" She came down, and we were half an hour before, I think it was Secular Sexuality. And we didn't have a call screener. And so within a half hour of walking in the building, we're just like, "Can you sit down and screen calls today?"
Oh my goodness.
I mean,
that's pretty on brand for
isn't
the
it?
Yeah.
And we've been so grateful to have her ever since. And that's just fantastic.
Yeah, Jenna's amazing.
She is. Let's see. The Nonprofits is back and has a brand new episode at 3 p.m. Central. So make sure that you stay tuned after this show so that you can watch The Nonprofits. There are 2 new hosts who have been dedicated volunteers and who are actually going in front of the camera this time. And it's exciting. So make sure you hop in and show your support. Yeah. Now, other news.
Yeah. So if you all remember, about a month ago, I believe it was September 20th, the episode that week, we had somebody named Chris call in, and he presented views that he said were espoused by Richard Carrier. And I'm sure you guys remember that call.
What was he saying that Richard Carrier was saying?
Essentially, he said that he was in a conversation with Richard, and that Richard had said that the atheist movement is over and we don't need to do any work anymore.
Oh, I remember that call.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a spirited conversation there. Anyway, this week, Richard Carrier actually reached out to me and was like, hey, I want to set the record straight because I've been misrepresented. And we want to make sure that when we're on this show, we are course correcting. We are making sure that we're fact checking as much as we can. In the moment, it's kind of hard.
Absolutely.
Because it's a live show and we don't know exactly who's calling. But if someone comes to us and says, hey, this is not accurate, we're going to share that with all of you. So I told Richard that we'd read his comment on the air just to make sure that he feels like we did everything we can to kind of correct this.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to read this off my phone super quick. All right. He says, my views were indeed misrepresented on this call. You were right from the start to ask what they even meant by movement. I had a hard time getting a clear answer from them myself. And you were right to state discomfort with discussing the views of someone not on the call. I appreciate that. The conversation they are relating pertained to a specific idea of movement, e.g. the growth of conferences and meetups has ended and is in decline. I like your framing this as one version of that movement has ended. I was not talking about what you went on to correctly talk about. I actually pretty much agree with everything you both said. For example, where you qualify different senses of mainstream was getting closer to what I actually said. Atheist content is universally and easily available to anyone almost worldwide. That will then have its effect. Likewise, I specifically told this person the atheist culture, the movement created, has still to be continually created and sustained. We don't sit back, we are it. Just exactly what you are doing and what I am doing. One can hardly claim that I've sat back and stopped creating atheist content. I have found in this and other cases that the person on the call has a hard time listening to and understanding what people tell them. This isn't the only time this has happened with them. So.
All right. So
we seem to be pretty much on the same page with Richard Carrier on this.
And Richard, thank you for reaching out and clarifying. One of the things that does make us uncomfortable is when somebody wants to call and have a conversation about a person who's not in the room. Right.
In general, we do not like to do that.
Yeah.
So if you are going to call in and ask us what another host meant by something or talk about another person in the atheist movement, that's generally not the vibe we're going for here.
Call about the issues, call about the subjects. We want to engage those things. We just don't want to try and be apologists for other human beings who could speak for themselves.
Exactly.
That said, is there anything else before we move on to our first call?
I think that's it.
All right. So I kind of want to take the caller who's been waiting the longest. We have another Canadian caller. I wonder if we've talked to them before. Jim in Canada.
Hi, Jim.
You're live with Eric and V. Hey.
Yeah, hi, Eric. Hi, V. First of all, congratulations on the elections. Congratulations to Mrs. Belk for having her, for being with child. And, just how are you guys?
We're doing really good.
We are doing well.
Yeah. You sound very, very familiar.
Have we talked with you before, Jim?
I think so. I'm sorry. I call so many shows, I sometimes forget which ones I call, but it could be that we've talked.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I had a question.
What did you want to talk about?
No, go ahead. You want
I was. We're all being very nice today. That's fun. No, I was hopping in so I can ask you. What did you want to talk about today?
Okay. So I had a question. What I'm saying is, as atheists or I guess agnostic or whatever you want to call it, how can you know that God isn't actively deceiving you to lack belief in God?
Well, that takes us right back to Descartes, doesn't it? Except
the demon.
Descartes called it a demon.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, yeah. But yeah, that's kind of, because I mean, are you saying that you can know that that's not the case?
No. So I think you're approaching knowledge in a very binary way that I kind of want to dissect, and I think that might help. When you know something, you're talking about your thoughts. on those things. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have an exact bead on truth, where we approach things with degrees of confidence. And so, do I have a high degree of confidence in the things that I accept to be true? I hope so. I want that to be the case. And so that's kind of how I approach it.
What I don't seem as clear is because in a scenario where God actively deceives you, any kind of confidence is consistent with deception. So it would be completely irrelevant what confidence level is if there is a scenario in which God is deceiving you, since that is conceding global skepticism, right?
Well, here's the thing: is what you've presented is a really, really nice little bubble. And you can represent that in an internally consistent way. I want to give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's assume you and I have a 10-hour conversation and we flesh it out entirely. I'm going to assume, Jim, that you are internally consistent in this view, right? There are plenty of views that can be internally consistent. The one that we usually go to is hard solipsism, right? The idea, are we in the matrix, or are we all brains in jars, or are you just a figment of my imagination? Those kinds of things. So what we want to do is we want to see if that model is consistent with the reality that we see. And
No, but Eric, the problem doesn't come in there. The problem comes in this scenario, in this, I guess, Cartesian scenario, right? Any kind of you perceiving is consistent with you being deceived. So,
Jim, I agreed.
If you concede global skepticism, any kind of probability statements are completely meaningless because
what is global skepticism, and where have we conceded that?
Yeah, I'm having trouble with that as well.
Well, you've conceded that you have no way to know that God is actively deceiving you, and that's concession of global skepticism.
You said that twice now. Define global skepticism.
Well, it's basically the view that you can't actually know anything except the fact that there are scenarios in which you can't know anything.
That does sound like skepticism. I like that.
It almost sounds like something an inner circle atheist might.
Does it?
Might buy into.
What I think happens in that is I have no problem if you, for example, are a global skeptic, but I just don't see how you can have any knowledge claims like probability or skepticism. Conceding global skepticism means you can't know anything, except the fact that you can't know anything.
Jim, I'm happy to respond to that. Skepticism is a tool, but that's not the only tool that we have. I want to try and apply skepticism as much as possible because I want to challenge what I believe. I want to challenge why I'm accepting something as true, and that I'm not just taking it on faith. I'm not using bad logic to get to things. And so while skepticism is a tool, it's not the only one. We also use different things. We use pragmatism, although we want to limit those as much as possible. What are some other views and world?
Well, here's the thing. I'm not convinced by this argument in the slightest, at least not in terms of where I think you want to be going with it.
What I'm saying is I don't see how you can espouse global skepticism and also have any knowledge claims like probability or any kind of tools, because global skepticism by definition,
because we're using knowledge in different ways here. We're equivocating your definition of knowledge and our definition of knowledge.
What's your definition of knowledge?
I think that knowledge is subjective. I think that you can say you know something and you will believe you know it, and I can say I know something based on the evidence that I've perceived, and I can believe I know it, but they might not require the same kind of evidence. So for me, knowledge is a spectrum, right? And we get to a certain degree of confidence, and then we say, colloquially, I know this thing. I know that Eric is sitting next to me because I can experience that, and it would be really weird if he was some kind of mirage or something. Like I can poke him.
So V, are you saying that someone can know something that is false?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but that's actually one of the most basic points in philosophy, that something that is false cannot be known because it's not true.
Where did you hear that?
And also you again implied your definition of knowledge.
Right.
Cannot be known. That's because you're using the JTB model of knowledge. We're not. V just clearly demonstrated to you that. So
Okay,
if you're assuming that something needs to be true to know it, then you are misapplying. You need to meet us somewhere where we can engage with you. Otherwise, you're talking past.
Also, that feels a little bit circular, doesn't it? Kind of like the ontological argument. I can conceive of a thing, therefore it exists.
V, can I ask you, are you saying that someone can know that the Earth is flat?
Yes.
But
If I guarantee you that I can find a flat earther who will tell me that they know that the Earth is flat.
But that's a non sequitur. If they know, it must be true, right? I mean, at least under the classical. But fine.
Right. Again, you did it again, Jim. We're not using the JTB model.
Okay, sure. Okay, so you're just saying
sure,
they're justified beliefs.
So
you're saying knowledge is just justified belief.
In practice, most of the time, that's kind of where we wind up. Yeah.
Okay, but then fine. What would you refer to as what we call justified true belief? What would you call that if not knowledge?
Unknowable.
Yeah. So you're taking an ontological claim and phrasing it as an epistemic claim. You don't have access to hardcore capital T truth.
Right.
Unless you're talking about something definitionally true, you are limited to your subjective experience. And because of that, we have to assign degrees of confidence, because to do otherwise is folly. To do otherwise is to assume that you have access to something that you don't.
Right. How
are you assigning degrees of confidence, Eric?
Through skepticism. Jim, how do you determine whether something you justifiably believe and you justifiably believe that is true? Like, where do you find that distinction? Say you believe two things. One of them is justified but not true. One of them is justified and true. How do you determine between the two?
Well, in the JTB model, right, someone cannot know something that is false. But under your knowledge definition, which
I think that's absolutely that's stupid. That is a stupid definition of knowledge.
Also, people are asking, what's the JTB model? For a long time, people defined knowledge as justified, true belief.
But that's fine. But Eric, I want to follow you up on this. You said that you had.
I kind of want to hear what you have to say about V's thing. I'm happy to couch my question.
Right. So we're gonna try not to go in a circle. Right. We're gonna try not to say I believe it. I think it's. I know it. Therefore, it's true. Therefore, I know it. Right. We don't want to do that because that's circular. So how do you determine what is true in you and and what you just are justified in knowing?
Okay, so that's an epistemological question, not an ontological one, right? Now,
it doesn't matter.
Well, actually, it does. Jim, pick. Are you making an epistemic question or an ontological? Is knowledge epistemic or ontological?
Ontological argument. I was making an ontological argument, but ultimately, what I'm saying is, in certain cases, I agree that we can't tell. Now, of course, that's not the case with everything. I'm an externalist, but even if we can't tell, after we can show that something is false, for example, you can't know it. Whereas in your model, something that is shown to be false can still be known.
Well, not if you include the word justified, right?
Right.
No, but justification.
Justified takes over all the work that true needs to be doing here. You can justifiably know that something exists, and the true part doesn't even factor in. It would be nice if it was also true, and if you're justified sufficiently, then we can agree that it's true for the purposes of a conversation. But true isn't doing any work here.
Something in a world, but how can you justify anything in a world where God is deceiving you actively?
So the time to believe it is when there's evidence for it. If you take this approach on its face the way you're doing, you also need to be accepting that any other gods that could be deceiving you also exist.
Right. How do you know that Satan isn't deceiving you and Satan is God?
Or they're all working together. There's a cabal of hundreds of deities, thousands of deities. They're all working together to deceive you every day.
Why I would have to accept that. I'm not a global skeptic. You conceded you are. I'm not.
Oh, hold on a second. Whoa. So you get to play by rules that we don't get to. Is that right?
No, I gave you the question, and you told me that you have no way to tell. I have a way to tell. I'm an externalist.
Okay, hold on. We didn't say there's no way to tell.
No.
Again, you're using binary thinking. You're saying either thing is absolutely true and we know it, or is absolutely not, it's not true. And that's not how it works. You have degrees of confidence in a thing. You do an experiment and let's say it is exactly what you hypothesized. That doesn't mean it's that way every single time. You need to continue to conduct that experiment over and over and over to develop a higher and higher degree of confidence that it's going to be replicable. But apply that to daily life, and that's how we get there.
But Eric, do you understand, in a world where you're actively deceived, every part of your confidence is part of that deception?
Okay, again, Jim.
No degree of confidence.
Jim, where's your evidence that I'm being actively deceived?
Why is that relevant to the question?
Because, it's very relevant, Jim.
Because the time we're going to accept it is when there's evidence for it, not a moment beforehand.
I'm not telling you no, I don't think I'm not telling you to accept it. I'm telling you, if there is no way for you to tell a world in which you're actively being deceived by a God to lack belief in God, and the other world where you actually lack belief in God, then you espouse global skepticism, and there are no degrees of confidence of anything.
Okay, right, Jim. If is doing a
so how can you make
a ton of heavy lifting in that statement?
Yeah.
Not only that, you're trying to pigeonhole us, dude. We're complex people with nuanced opinions.
Why does it fucking matter? If you are right, and this is a universe where a God is actively deceiving every atheist and forcing them to not believe, then what does that change? What on earth is your point?
Changes is what statements you can make. For example, Eric's statements about experimentation and degrees of confidence are a complete bunk. It makes no sense because any experiment you conduct and any confidence you gain from that is an active part of that deception. That's the point of being deceived. So
okay.
You still make any knowledge claims.
This is like some weird
No,
upside down presuppositionalism.
no, this is straight up presuppositionalism.
Yeah, this is
It's not even upside down. You're presupposing that just because we can't have absolute knowledge, that we can't have any kind of confidence or knowledge whatsoever. You're trying to pin it. Jim, shut up and listen for just a second. Because I've been trying to answer you a couple of times and you've jumped in, and I've been very polite, wanting to make sure that I'm moving forward the conversation. But if I don't get to finish my sentence, then it's not going to contextually make any sense. Okay?
All right.
Cool. Skepticism is something that we use so that we can make sure that we don't get overconfident. Yes. But we have to use other things. We have to wind up using empiricism. We do have to use pragmatism. We do have to reach a point where, yes, okay, I have enough confidence that that this show's going to happen today, that I'm going to get ready for it. Right? Just because I can't have absolute certainty about a thing doesn't mean that everything is out the window. And if you try and pigeonhole us one more time saying that we are, was it global skeptics and that's it?
We've conceded global skepticism.
Then you can take the conversation elsewhere. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
No, I just think that
it's cool. Bye. I think we did pretty well there.
I don't get the goal of that argument. That okay, yes, I am willing to concede for the sake of that argument. Sure, let's pretend that God is actively deceiving me and making me into an atheist, which is kind of Calvinism in a way, not the deception part, but I don't have a choice in this. This. I am a pawn in a game. So why are you even fucking talking to me?
Because what he wants to do is he wants to undermine how you're approaching it.
He has to do a better job.
Well, and for people who are following at home who are wondering, hey, there are a couple of terms that we weren't, I didn't really get. There's a reason why justified true belief as knowledge is not a good model. And that is because you could coincidentally be right about something. And let's say I said that V has 27 cents in their pocket. Why? Because I read it in my tea leaves. Well, turns out V does have 27 cents in their pocket. Does that mean that I knew it for those reasons? It doesn't work out that way, right? If you look online, there are lots of examples of that, which is why we're trying to be consistent when we talk about knowledge. And so when this person came in and they wanted to talk about, okay, hey, you can't know anything for certain. I think that's really where it came in, is it stopped.
Yeah.
Is his definition of knowledge would not move past that.
Right. And you have, when you're being an interlocutor in an argument, you have to be willing to grant that the other person is being honest. And we were willing to go into this conversation saying, you know what, maybe Jim really does have a question about weak atheism, which isn't even the thing that he brought up.
No.
And we were willing to do that.
And willing
Jim,
to say that his model was internally consistent all the way across the board.
Let's find common ground. Jim
Sure.
wasn't willing to do that. So we hung up on Jim.
Work on it, though. Call us back.
Yeah.
Jamie in Wisconsin. You're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about, Jamie?
Hi, I called today. I wanted to talk about the justification that I've heard you guys give for abortion, and then I just want to break it down to its basic premise and then see if that premise carries over to other decisions that maybe you guys would espouse, or see where you guys sit on that. So if I could just, I'm going to start by just kind of recapping what my understanding is.
I actually, can I ask you a quick question, Jamie?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yep.
Can you tell me where this intersects with atheism? Like, I'm happy to have the conversation, but I feel like I need to take off my atheist hat and put on other hats to answer you. And while this is a show that espouses more than just atheism, it espouses skepticism and humanism. I'm super curious. How is this an atheist question?
Right.
I think the pool of philosophy that we use is very deep as far as where we make our decisions. So Christians would say we can have we can be very smart and have a million great points, but the bottom line is maybe God said that we shouldn't do abortion, so that's where we're going to rest with, where maybe somebody from an atheist standpoint using secular humanism would kind of go through their points and plot them out more mathematically. Well, this is my premise. This is where the premise carries force. So this is where I make my decision. And, so that's why I say, if that makes sense, sorry.
Sure. So do you want to engage with this today?
Sure. Can't promise a long conversation because I'm honestly not sure where you've heard my views on abortion because I don't necessarily talk about them on the show. But I do want to make sure that we are clarifying here. There are, most Christians actually are okay with abortion because about 70% of the U.S. supports Roe v. Wade. And most of the U.S. is still Christian. Also, the majority of abortions that are had by Christians. So this is not in any way a black and white, this or that kind of conversation. So as long as we're putting that out there and making sure that we're not drawing that distinction, I'm happy to engage with you, at least as long as we can keep kind of the skepticism aspect as front and center here.
Yep, that's perfect. So my understanding is that some of the major justifications is because it's kind of paramount, the woman's choice in the matter, and she shouldn't be forced to use her body, to carry forth the pregnancy. If she gets pregnant, if she chooses to have sex, that's not a choice to become pregnant. And if she happens to get pregnant, even if she chooses to become pregnant, that doesn't necessarily means that she's choosing to carry the pregnancy to term. And like I say, everything comes down to her choice and what she's going to use in her body. Am I kind of being a little bit accurate with my description of our justification?
I don't know if I'd call it a justification. I'd say that it's a worldview informed by consistent consent. So let's talk about this. Say a woman decides that she's ready to have sex, or anybody with a uterus decides they're ready to have sex. That does not mean that she is consenting to any particular type of sex. Right. And say that in the middle of sex, things go wrong. Either she starts to have pain or her partner, whoever it is, decides that they are going to engage in something that maybe they didn't agree on beforehand. That person has a right to say, stop, I'm done. I don't want to have sex anymore, even though I consented initially. It's a concept of always being able to say no when it comes to your body. So in that sense, yes, but that's not a justification so much as just my approach to consent in general.
Yeah, I think that there are other things that you can consider. I think we're both, V and I are under the assumption that you are against abortion. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure that we're having a conversation that we all understand that we're having. Okay.
It
So
sounds like, if I just can, because V hit it on the head. So V hit it on the head so well that we really we reached that basic reductio premise that it's really about consent. It's about personal choice and consent on what they're going to do with their body. So I would like to take that premise and now just move it into a couple other aspects and choices in life to see if you guys are consistent in that worldview. My question would be, would you guys also...
Well, Jamie, can we add one more in then if we're doing that?
Absolutely.
Cool. A child should never be a punishment. Raising a child in an environment where they're treated like a punishment is terrible for literally everyone involved. And so, okay, now go ahead.
So if we're going to move the personal choice and consent over, would you guys be advocates then for dismantling our welfare system, food stamp system, these kind of things where people are mandated to give their labor and their lives to the support of other people and maybe turning it into a voluntary system?
Ooh, so you mean dismantling the idea that we need to use our bodies to create capital for a few people in order to survive? Are you advocating for the dismantling of capitalism? That's impressive.
It is.
Wow.
I wonder, are you against the police as well? Do you think we should dismantle the police department?
You guys kind of flipped it on its head a little bit, I think.
No. We're taking you exactly where you're describing.
Yeah.
You see, taxes fund police, and if this is an argument against taxes, then we're just making sure you are wanting to entirely dismantle the police as a concept. Then, at least one that's funded by taxes. Is that right? How about teachers?
Yeah, I think you could.
Are you against teachers and firefighters as well?
Well, I am against government schools. You could do a voluntary system. People could sign up and volunteer and be part of it. Insurance, you know.
Are we talking to a sovereign? Are you a sovereign citizen, Jamie?
I'm not. I'm not, but I do think I do kind of break it down to where, yeah, we shouldn't be forced to pay all of our money for all these things that we don't really have choices on. Now, roads, and I mean, we know there's gray areas and stuff.
Roads was coming. Okay, but here's the thing, Jamie. This is what I don't understand. You seem to be advocating for personal autonomy to the extent that we don't have to pay taxes, we don't have government schools, and yet you support restricting abortion? How does that follow? That seems like a contradiction in terms there.
I'm not saying that the government should. I'm not saying the government should restrict abortion. I'm just wondering if my understanding of your premise, if you guys would carry that over consistently.
Sure. So I think that when it comes to us, Jamie, I spoke over you. You want to finish that again?
I'm kind of putting the burden on you guys, the onus on you guys to see if your model carries over. We could talk about my model and where my model fails and how I'm wrong a million ways and I'm inconsistent a million ways, and I will concede all of that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Do you want to know about us?
Mm-hmm.
Make sure. Well, the question is that sometimes when I hear atheists speak, they speak like we're very scientific and we have everything down very pat, and there's not huge holes in hypocrisy in our beliefs because we go off of evidence and science, and those things are always very high standard. And I always like to just kind of show people that I don't think it matters what a person believes. I think we're always wrong in like a million ways. And I think it's important that people understand that to reach more to truth. It's important to be honest about a person's own inconsistencies. So
sure.
I just appreciate it when people kind of say, yeah, we do have troubles with these things, you know?
Okay. Well, then I can answer two ways. I'll be quick because I know you have responses as well. Mm-hmm. Actually, do you want to go first? Because I've got two.
Okay, sounds good. So first of all, Jamie, I agree with you. I think the people who pretend they have it all figured out and they've reached everything through logical conclusions and there's no emotion and there's no fallacies and there's no bias is all absolutely bogus. Everybody is just figuring their shit out. And some people have a better toolbox and some don't, but that doesn't mean that anybody has everything all wrapped up, right? We've all got our areas of blind spots. In this instance, I am a little bit hesitant to engage just because I think your assumption is that there are hard and fast rules that can be extended to all scenarios and all forms of interaction. And while I am 100% down with bodily autonomy and consistent, enthusiastic consent when it comes to two individuals, I think that there's a bigger and much more interesting conversation to be had about what that looks like for government systems, what that looks like for taxes and for the police and for government schools and for capitalism, right? Like, if we are going to go here, let's go all the way and abolish the idea that you need to work for a living because your body is being forced to create money for someone else. Like, we can have that conversation 100%, and I'd love to hypothesize about what that looks like.
My brain's going right down that way too. I mean,
Yeah.
why would you punish somebody or send them to jail if they, aren't you taking away their autonomy? If they decided to kill someone and they wanted to continue on a murdering spree,
right?
By
trying to
detaining
get this
them.
down to its most composite parts is good in a sense, to an extent, but I think that we are running the risk of being reductionistic here and reducing everything to one sentence and then trying to apply that to every possible scenario. And of course, we're all going to come up against barriers and walls and blind spots, because that is the nature of subjective morality. That is the nature of being an agnostic. We don't know everything, and we have no idea how to use the rules of the game in a way that makes the most sense and helps everybody equally. We're trying. That's what secular humanism is about. But what I can say is that as far as the abortion issue goes, as far as bodily autonomy for an individual goes, I think we've hit the nail on the head with that one.
I do too. And I do want to give it one other, because we've been talking about this ideologically.
Yeah.
But
am I the one talking ideologically and
I'm
you're going to go pragmatism in here? Oh, fun.
I know, right?
Okay.
So the other is the pragmatic sense. We live in a social hierarchy. We are a social species. And because of that, there are things that you give to the group because you are receiving a benefit, right? I participate in this society and reap the benefit of being able to go to the grocery store and have foods from all over the world, because we are a social species. We are working together to build that society together. It's a social contract. And so pragmatically, even if you take the ideals out, making those concessions increases the quality of life. And if you just want to be utilitarian about it, there's that. And when you apply it to abortion, it's this. If abortions were restricted, that would not stop people from having them. It would just make them less safe. And so by making sure that...
Actually, abortion is at an all-time low since Roe v. Wade was passed.
Yeah. Well, and I think that coincides with the availability of birth control.
And sex education.
Yeah.
All of which are encouraging bodily autonomy and not allowing somebody to rely too much on the...
Yeah.
Like, I don't...
I just think that if you want to make sure that people are living healthy lives and are minimizing risks to themselves, then making sure that they have access to abortions is, safe abortions in clinical environments and environments that they can be safe in, then you are contributing to the growth of a society that has less suffering in it.
Unless people who are reliant on the welfare that you apparently dislike because they were forced to have more kids than they could financially afford.
Yeah. I don't know. I hope that gives you a lot to chew on, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I think it might have given him more than he wanted.
I think this is probably the most level-headed discussion on abortion that has happened on the ACA so far. So
well, but Jamie, I would. I don't know. We did most of the talking, though.
I think that's why it was so level-headed.
Hey, Jamie, I would love for you to listen back in and pick out things that you want to talk about in specifics, because if you want to talk about an ideology and we could zoom in on that, maybe we can have a more nuanced conversation. But it seems like we zoomed out so much that we could only give a general picture, especially, this call-in format.
A little bit. Can I recap with just a couple quick sentences?
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's an important logical tool that we do when we break things down to its basic premise and then see if that premise extends to other areas. Isn't that like a normal part of logical, you know what I mean, working through problems? We kind of address that if that's a good thing or a bad thing, and I think you guys were kind of saying that that's not something you can do all the time, although, like I say, I would put forth, I think that's a kind of a common logical tool to use. And of course, like I say, you run into some problems there. And then I don't 100% agree with, like working, somebody going to jail for murder is way different than somebody being forced to pay their labor and taxes to support other people that, perhaps were born into a bad situation or made a bad situation, whether it might be, they're like, those things to me are kind of apples and oranges. So I think.
Are you saying that we can't use the same standard for all situations?
You can, but somebody murdering someone and being segregated from society for that is different than a government coming to me saying I have to go to work and pay 50% of my labor to support, you know what I'm saying, other people. Those things I don't think are.
I think I speak for both of us when I say we're very glad you've come to agree with us.
Perfect. I'm glad we're all getting along. I appreciate you guys.
All right, take care, man.
Keep up the good work.
Well,
Thank you.
From a religious theist caller, from somebody who called in specifically saying, hey, they're a believer, they want to challenge our ideas, to say, keep up the good work. That, all right, either we're doing something really, really well,
or failing miserably.
Yeah. So for those following at home, I think that was actually really, really useful. I think we walked around the subject of applying a general principle everywhere is not the way you do that. And
if only it were, it would be so much easier to live life if we had, say, like 10, like just like rules or commandments to kind of go off of that worked in all scenarios.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. Oh, no. Please, if you're a religious caller, please call in about that just so that we can make V sit with it. All right. Who would you like to talk to next?
John in
Connecticut.
Ooh,
yes. This is another person who's been waiting on the line for a long time and has got me really excited. Thank you, V. John, you're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about?
Hi. I just want to thank you, first of all, for opening people's minds to the falsehood of religion. However,
all right.
You sound familiar.
Not faith. So a hypothesis is dualism says that consciousness is the soul, and materialism hypothesizes that consciousness is from the brain. Now, by definition of supernatural, which is anything that is not explained by materialism,
okay, hold on.
Cannot be.
John. This
Yes.
sounds like a really good script. I just want to make sure that we're engaging with each other and are not sitting down to a lecture. So we're going to want to engage with you together on this. Okay? So when you talked about materialism, I definitely would agree with you. I do not believe that a soul exists outside of the consciousness that we're experiencing by having a brain that works. And the idea of dualism is that, yes, there's a ghost in the machine, that there's some kind of soul that is not included in the body. So I think we're on the same page there. But just wanting to make sure, are we good so far?
Yeah, I'm a little nervous, but I get that way.
Okay,
That's
worries. Okay,
all right,
ahead.
we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Continue.
So would you agree that consciousness is supernatural by definition of supernatural?
If you're operating under a dualistic worldview, then sure. But the problem here is that we are not convinced of dualism, so we couldn't grant that consciousness is supernatural.
Yeah, using your definition of supernatural.
By supernatural is that anything not explained by materialism. So involving consciousness, it would be chemistry, physics, or neurology. None of these textbooks, I'm pretty sure that no textbook of these topics can explain consciousness. Therefore, it's supernatural.
Okay, so that is a fallacious appeal. Saying I couldn't find it, therefore my conclusion is correct, is not a good way of going about it.
So is there an explanation for consciousness in a textbook?
Actually, what you can ask us, and I can probably do a pretty good job of explaining consciousness to you, and I bet V could as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Is that a question you're asking?
Yeah, you could please explain how a brain cells, because the brain is made of brain cells. How can brain cells see, smell, or hear?
So
I can guarantee you that this is in a textbook somewhere. Just have to know where to look.
yeah, so we are products of evolution, and we evolve over a huge amount of time. I mean, it is difficult. I would say it's impossible to really understand how much time evolution takes. And during that process of evolution, we are constantly moving towards adapting better to survive. And so to have sight is an adaptation that increases our survivability, right? Having gut bacteria and all of the intricacies that we have, each of those things have in their own way increased our survivability, including the cognition, right? Communication, language, what we have, those kinds of things are all a product of a shit ton of time. So if you want to talk about consciousness, though, I think you hit the nail on the head. You said sight, you said smell, you said taste. Those things are you're bundling all under this consciousness thing. Consciousness is the byproduct. It is the emergent property of having a brain. We know that by looking at brains that have been damaged or brains that are no longer working, and also by recognizing that we do not see consciousnesses.
I do not imagine a different way to say that.
Just to make the pedants angry, the conscious eye. Anyway, we don't see them outside of having a brain. That's just not a product of something like
in a brain either. It's a material. You cannot find consciousness in the natural world. It's a material.
So that's a non sequitur. Please explain to us why it's immaterial.
Because you can't hold it in a jar. You can't. You can't find consciousness anywhere. You can find brain activity, but you can't tell if the lights are on, but nobody home. The natural world can carry on just fine using blind physics without consciousness, without an inner movie. Who's watching this inner movie? Do brain cells watch this inner movie?
Wait.
We're like 12 questions deep here.
Yeah, we've got to slow down. Let's slow down a minute. First of all, we can pretty much tell whether or not the lights are on through brain scans. So that is something we can do. We can also not hold physics in a jar. Are you saying that physics are also supernatural?
No, I would say physics would be more like an abstract noun, not a concrete.
So you're saying that only concrete nouns are part of materialism? I think you're fundamentally misunderstanding what materialism is.
Materialism is just that everything is made of matter and its arrangements. So in materialism, consciousness is non-essential.
I think we just jumped off the tracks there. V, do you want to ask him again? Because it being non-essential doesn't have anything to do with the question.
I want to make sure we're agreeing on a definition for materialism here, because while I agree with your initial statement that materialism does not allow for a dualistic explanation of consciousness, materialism is not the idea that only things with mass exist.
Okay. So how does materialism account for consciousness in a coherent explanation of it? How do brain cells make consciousness versus just blindly following the laws of physics and chemistry? Why am I a human living a human life and experiencing it versus being a human not experiencing it? How does materialism account for this extra puzzle piece?
So
here, real quick, I just want to make sure that we're establishing this. Consciousness is an inherent property of sufficient complexity, very much like wetness. So you said, how do individual brain cells create consciousness? Because individual brain cells are not conscious. And to use that argument is, what is it, the fallacy of subtraction or addition? I forget which one it is. Composition, yes. So the idea here is that individual water molecules are not wet.
Oh, no, division, you're right, sorry.
Yeah. Individual water molecules are not wet, but you get enough of those water molecules together and it creates a property that we describe as wetness. Does that mean that materialists think that wetness doesn't exist? No, it means that we understand that it is an emergent property. And the same goes for consciousness. When you have a brain with a sufficient number of working brain cells, consciousness emerges, and it's a property. It is not a noun.
Well, how do I know that the material world is an emergent property of consciousness? Your analogy is a good one, but analogies are not proof. They're not explanations. They're not evidence. They're just analogies.
So it sounds like, well, hold on a second. It sounds like you're being a sore loser here. Here's one more.
I've heard this after all the arguments.
Here's one more. So I download a program onto my computer. Does that program exist outside of the CD?
On the hard drive. Data is material.
Wait, is the program immaterial?
But no, the program is data on a hard drive.
Hold on a second. Can you point to a single piece on that hard drive? I mean, really, it's just ones and zeros. I mean, where's the program, John?
So how does your analogy explain how consciousness is accounted for in materialism?
Hold on a second. Well, I'm using your argument back at you. I'd really love to hear how you answer it. Show me where the program is in my computer. How do you get a program out of just ones and zeros? I can point at any spot on the hard drive and point to a single point of data and say that is not the program.
Okay, so physics explains that pretty well, but physics doesn't explain consciousness.
Okay.
Do you disagree?
I agree. That's a wonderful dodge. Let's try one more time. Can you point to a place on the computer and say there's the program? Or are you recognizing that the constituent parts required for that program to run is the program?
So you're saying the brain is a computer?
In that way, I think it's a pretty good analogy.
But physics can explain computer science. Physics.
Well, that's a non sequitur you might just have to live with there, buddy. Because if you actually study it, yes, computer science is an application of physics. You have to understand physics to be able to do these kinds of things. If you don't understand physics, there's no way that you're going to be able to move forward in its application. So
how do brain cells?
You should take that up with computer scientists. You should take that to a university, because I think that you could stand to learn a lot about it.
Yeah, you can, but you can't go to a university and learn about consciousness from a brain.
Yep.
And I think we have wrung every last drop from John. John, take care, buddy.
Oh my goodness. You cannot taste things without a supernatural ghost in the machine. And no textbook will explain how you taste things from a materialistic standpoint. Checkmate, atheists.
Mm-hmm. I think it's time to thank our top 5 patrons.
I think so.
We have other amazing calls on the line, and we're really, really excited about it. I was actually going to say before this show, hey, we're not getting a lot of callers, and I'm really, really worried about it. And yet I look and I just see a lineup of amazing just people on the line to talk to, and I'm just so, so grateful for that. So cheers. Just shout out to our call screener today, right? Isn't it just Katie?
I think that she got some backup last minute.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Well, shout out to our call screeners. Y'all rock. And we also want to thank our top 5 patrons. I'm refreshing. Our top 5 patrons are Eric Tweet. By the way, somebody tweeted me and said, Eric, you need to tweet. And so I'm wondering if that is actually Eric Tweet message.
You're getting this message from multiple places now.
Damn it. Fine. Desert Heathen, Bethany P, Jay Friedman, and Ward Knipling. And because V likes to say it,
Dingleberry Jackson.
Thank you so much for your support. It is your support that continues to allow this show to go on. It costs money to have all of these people on the lines. It costs money to get the equipment to be able to put this out, and also to give the volunteers access to the programs necessary to make this happen, as we're all working remotely.
Those supernatural programs that don't exist in real life.
Yeah, well, I'm that there are a lot of ghosts in my machine, if that's the case.
We'll be shouting out those ghosts during the crew camp.
Well, including but not limited to Among Us, which is a game I still really want you to play.
Are you really outing me as someone who's never played Among Us on live air?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to die later. Thank you so much. It's your support that allows us to keep going. We love you. Thank you. That said, are we ready for our next caller?
Yeah, let's jump in.
All right. Oh my. How about we go to Deutschland? Deutschland.
Yes, this is Elli. We've talked to Elli
Yes,
before.
Elli, wie geht's?
Good, und dir? It's nice to talk to you again.
Very, very good. What did you want to talk about today?
So, since our last talk, I was thinking a lot about, well, stuff in general. And one thing I keep stumbling over is whenever I try to phrase like issues I have, things I've gone through, things that really had an impact on my life, I not only have the feeling that I need to justify that in relation to my identity as an atheist or as a lesbian or whatever, but also I actually meet people who go on and say, well, you're just mad at religious people, you're just mad at God and whatever. And that's just a thing that I'm still kind of hung up on at this point in time. And I thought that would be kind of interesting to talk about.
Sure.
Definitely.
Well, I did a lot of talking on that last call.
Yeah. Well, Elli, first of all, lovely talking with you again. I think that I feel that deep in my bones. That is something that we all have to deal with on a constant basis. And honestly, you can do your best to explain where you're coming from, and there will always be people who refuse to accept that that's what you mean, that you're being honest when you talk with them. They are going to need to put their narrative on you because otherwise that causes too much cognitive dissonance for them. If they take you at your word that you left for reasons that are justified and explainable and logical and realistic, then that means that they have to accept that their religion might not be those things. And so it's a defense mechanism that they are putting on, and they're putting it on you, which is the unfair part. They are deciding that their comfortability and their worldview is more important than treating you like an honest person and a person with autonomy and intention and rationality. And that is very insulting. And the fact that you feel hurt by that or frustrated by that is absolutely justified and understandable, and something I think most atheists who left their faith can empathize with. And I really don't know what next steps are apart from accepting that this is going to be a thing and dismissing the people in your life who require that narrative in order to continue to interact with you.
Yeah, I think that in the end, it could be a goal to pity them because that's what they deserve. They deserve pity. These are people, like Vi said, who cannot accept that you have a good reason for what you believe. Instead, they're just going to pin it on some other thing so that they don't have to think very hard. That's sad. And hopefully, maybe, by living as a good example, maybe they can, in time, challenge things that maybe they're less afraid of, and it can cause them to continue to challenge and grow in other ways in their life. But you have no obligation to take on their weird bullshit because that is theirs. They own that entirely. You cannot reach into their brain. You cannot make them understand that they're doing that. Like, that's a process they need to go through. You don't need to be there for it. You're not required to jump through hoops for them. You shouldn't.
Yeah.
And that's true of people. You should, even if you want to have a relationship with somebody, you still don't need to jump through those hoops.
Right. And this is the prescient thing here is, of course, the atheism piece and the leaving religion piece. But in any other situation, can you imagine where this would go over and not be offensive and demeaning? Like, I like this movie. Well, you just like that movie because you hate my movie. Or
Yeah.
I voted for this candidate. Oh, you only voted for this candidate because your dad hurt you.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I'm not talking to you anymore because clearly you're not invested in having an honest conversation where we are on equal footing. And of course, this all gets heightened when it's religion, when it's that intense and that fundamental to some people's identity. But just because they are not able to see you as a full person with autonomy and with rationality doesn't mean that you have any obligation to prove that to them. And it's up to you if you want to continue those conversations. That's great. I think Eric's advice to move to a place of empathy and pity for that person is probably the best way to do that. But if you don't have the mental spoons for that, right? If you don't have the energy, if you would rather do better things with your time, that is absolutely okay. And you are hereby absolved of ever needing to deal with that again. You can walk away and know that we're on your side in that.
Yep.
Oh man, damn, you always get me to cry. Damn. But it's great that you mentioned the spoon theory. I think it's very beneficial to anyone, really, even people without mental health issues, to look into that, because we have a limited time on this earth, and it's really important to think about what are we going to do with what we have. And yeah.
You know, if they think they've got eternity to argue this, then, they can do that on their time. But we know that's not true. We do know that we have a limited amount of time, and that is precious. That's valuable, and you get to decide how you spend it.
Absolutely. If you haven't looked up, go ahead.
No. I interrupted you. Sorry.
If you haven't looked up sea lining, you absolutely should, because I feel like those things go hand in hand. I recently got an email from somebody who wanted to rehash an entire conversation that I've already had many, many times about the definition of atheism. And it was a huge email, and I just was not. We were in line to vote. It was 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, have fun with that. And they're just like, you are such a dishonest person. It's like, I don't owe you shit. Just because somebody wants to tell you a thing doesn't mean that they're worth your time or energy. It just doesn't. You get to choose.
Funny enough, now that you mentioned it, I think I can I already use kind of that technique when I think about a person that really gets on my nerves and I have to interact with them. I just consider that maybe they just don't have a filter. They don't have the capacities to not step on my toes. So maybe I just shrug and pity them a little for their lack of insight into and empathy.
Yeah.
Ooh, I got one. Just imagine that you're on Tinder and you just get spammed with messages from guys who want to hook up.
Or women. I believe you said you're a lesbian.
And women and everyone else. I apologize. Well, actually, no. I'm if I stick with guys, that's even better.
Okay.
You don't respond, and they say, "Well, why aren't you responding to me? Damn it! You need to give me an adequate explanation." Do you think that you need to write them a dear sir or madam? I have chosen to not accept you as a sexual partner because of X, Y, and Z, and just do that for the rest of your life. You don't owe them.
I like that a lot.
That's hilarious. And also, Eric, I don't know if you were aware, there are a lot of guys and also straight couples on Tinder marking their profile as female so they can message people who have set their profile to only seeing females and only being seen by females.
I feel your pain.
I feel like I cannot add into that other than to say that I'm not that, and I'm so sorry. Anyway,
but, no, Ellie, I think that you're spot on. Using the same tactics that you've developed to deal with people who get on your nerves for completely other reasons. this is just another type of person getting on your nerves, and you have as much right to be like, all right, they probably don't know what they're doing. I'm going to put up with them and then just forget about them when they're gone and do my best to minimize interaction where I can.
Mhm.
That's all that's required of you. Your mental health comes first.
Agreed.
But Vi, how can someone get on a single nerve cell?
Oh, we love you, Elli.
That was beautiful.
Vielen Dank. Thank you for calling. And we hope to hear from you again soon.
Bye.
Cheers. All right.
How can you get on a single nerve? That was beautiful.
I really, really liked that.
That was really, really awesome.
All right. Ooh, we're going from Germany to Mexico.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah. David in Mexico. You're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about?
Hey, how you doing today?
Doing good. What did you want to talk to us about today?
My wife is in her 60s. We're both atheists. And I start to wonder at times when one of us dies, there's a funeral. It's not going to be my funeral because I won't be there. But if at my wife's funeral, and she has a number of theist relatives who would be there, I'm kind of wondering and concerned if I hear a bunch of them saying, oh, she's in a better place, she's gone to be with God, she's in heaven, crap like that, I'm worried I might just lose it. And I really should be talking to them ahead of time and saying, you know, please respect my wishes and trying to do our best to do that. I wonder if you have thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is actually something that has come up a couple times on this show. And I think it's smart of you to think about this ahead of time, because I know there are a lot of people who in the moment are already dealing with a whole lot of grief and a whole lot of loss. And then they have to contend with this for the first time. And it's overwhelming. It's a whole lot of stuff. And so for me, I think you can go at this two ways, and maybe a combination of these is most appropriate. On the one hand, yes, if you and your wife have plans for what that end of life looks like, whether that's, you know, the days or months before, or the funeral, or how you talk about each other afterwards, all of that you have the right to ask for. You can write that in your will. You can express it to individuals. Hey, this is what I want. This is what I don't. And then it's up to them to decide whether or not they want to respect that. And if they don't, then that tells you a whole lot about who you need to worry about interacting with afterwards. Yeah. On the other hand, I know that if I were to go to a funeral, heaven forbid, of somebody in my family, I would have to sit there and squirm so hard, because I would be the only person who was feeling that loss in the same way, because everybody else is going to be talking about they're in a better place, they're with God, this was part of the plan, God needed another angel, all of these terrible, terrible platitudes. That would be the message that everyone around me was dealing with. And you know what? That's how they need to deal. It is a coping mechanism. And while if it were my funeral or the funeral of a partner or a child or, you know, anyone that I had direct say in, yeah, I'd probably try to minimize that as much as I could. But I would also need to understand that they're also going through that grief and that grieving process. And this is something that they are clinging to for dear life, like a life raft in the ocean. They are desperate, and these things help them. So as long as it does not interfere with you or your boundaries or your ability to grieve for your wife eventually, should it happen, then I say make sure you're dealing with that, making sure that that circle around you is secure and that you're not letting people in who will hurt you or say things that are insensitive. And then let other people grieve how they need to grieve. And if there's some overlap and some conflict, just be empathetic and trust that they will be too.
To a degree.
Yeah.
To a degree. When my grandmother passed, my uncle turned her funeral into an altar call and stood before us and during the funeral, oh yeah, no, I'm going into my own family on this one because I'll never forgive you for this. Not you, but my uncle, who instead of
Yeah, David.
instead of making it a, we're here to celebrate the life of my grandmother, it was, she's watching you in heaven right now and she wants to see you. He held the memory of my grandmother hostage, that we needed to turn ourselves over to Christ right now, where we'd never see her again. And ultimately, look at it this way, man. If you walked up to somebody religious and they lost somebody, would you stand there in their face and say, you're never going to see them again? There's no heaven, there's no hell, they're just rotting in the ground. Would you do that to someone?
Yeah.
You would?
And the flip side of this is that I was at a funeral about 2 years ago of a relative's father who had died, and the minister, priest, whatever you call him, used this as an opportunity to. I felt like he was standing on this man's coffin and using it as a soapbox.
Yeah.
And through the lame proof of the existence of God. And he berated the atheists in the crowd, including me.
And here's the thing, man, is you would not do that to another person. I'm assuming that you are saying no to that earlier question. You wouldn't yell at somebody and tell them that, it's just not the right time. It's inconsiderate. And in as much as you wouldn't do that to somebody else, if somebody does that to you, they deserve just as much respect, which is none at all.
Yeah.
They can go fuck off.
If that were to happen at my wife's wedding, I would be quite angry.
Yeah, and you know what? If they knowingly were doing that, then they deserve that anger. I'm sorry. I understand that they need to process their grief too.
I fully agree with that. If they know that they're doing that and they are overstepping that boundary, then they deserve what they get, and they do not get to play respectability politics and say, how dare you be disrespectful to me? No, they started it.
No, agreed. I think these are things that you probably knew, but if that affirmation helps, then I hope that people can come back and listen to this and hear that you're not only are you not alone in feeling that way, but you're supported.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
I did want to point out a few quick things before we move on to the next call. Number one, if you have the time and you want to volunteer, there are volunteer opportunities for you. We needed to move to members only during the live chat, and I miss seeing the live chat scrolling by and everybody's excitement. That's something that I feel like people come here to do, and if we don't have the mods, enough people to staff that, then we're asking a very small group of people to do something that is very, very, very difficult, and it's just cruel. So if you do have the time and are dependable, and not only that, hey, maybe you don't want to be a mod, maybe you don't want to volunteer with the ACA, but you do want to do something good with your time, consider volunteering with Recovering from Religion. The Hotline Project is always in need of volunteers. And the fact that we do get messages from RFR saying, hey, we've got a couple more people from Talk Heathen, that's amazing. Please, can we keep doing that? If you want to volunteer your time, they will train you, and even if you've got one weekend a month or maybe a couple hours each week, whatever the case is, it is absolutely appreciated, and tell them Talk Heathen sent you. Anything else before we move on?
I think we're good.
All right.
Edgar has been waiting for an hour and a half.
Then let's talk to Edgar. Edgar in California. You're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about?
Let's get him on the air first.
Oh.
Hi, Edgar.
Hello.
Hi. Basically, you guys are awesome. And hearing you guys speak, there's like a million different things I want to talk about. But I'll just say broadly, like Hitchens said, what can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. And so the whole Blaise Pascal thing, and he believed that, how do you know a demon's not deceiving you and all that stuff? Like, if you can assert a demon, I can assert Papa Smurf without evidence. So that's ridiculous. Anyways, so what I want to ask,
Argument from
I
Papa
love Peter
Smurf.
Boghossian. Yes. Yeah, J.C. Eberhard. He was awesome. I love his work. Anyways, so I moved to my neighborhood. It's mostly Hispanic, and I speak Spanish. And I was getting lots of discussions about religion, like a ridiculous amount over cerveza. But anyways, so one of the things that I know from Peter Boghossian's book, A Manual for Creating Atheists, he says you're not supposed to go into facts. And I understand the reason why. But because I come from a religious background, like, and I know all the crazy stuff in the Bible, raised Luther and all that, it's difficult to not go into facts about the Bible. But so here's one thing I want to ask you guys about, because I know we have to focus on epistemology. That'd be the point, the ideal. And so in my neighborhood, because it's mostly Hispanic, they're mostly Catholics. And so when I was like, yeah, dude, soy ateo, I'm an atheist. Then they're like, what? You don't believe in the Virgin Mary? And like the dude, like all of a sudden his like tone turned to like I murder babies in my sleep or something, or like not in my sleep, but like I murder babies, like just because I don't believe in the Virgin Mary. So I'm like, how can we focus just on like the epistemology and not have that tendency to want to like go into like facts and stuff? Like, I don't know.
Well, so I can tell you where you're screwing up right away, and that is cervezas. You need to be, if you're in Southern California and you're not drinking micheladas, you're in trouble, dude. You need to get a michelada, and you need to get one stat.
I did. I know. I'm not drunk like when I have these conversations, dude. You know,
but that is a deep cut for a very small group of people, and I'm proud of it. So Edgar, here's the thing, man. It takes all types. It takes all types. There's a reason why this show is going on and the atheist experience is also going on. And I didn't understand that when Talk Heathen first started. It was like, are we just going to be copying the atheist experience? No, we're going to be bringing our own attitude and our own approach. And the fact is I've absolutely read emails that have said, hey, you know what? I watched the atheist experience and I got really, really angry about something that was said. And I dove into it and it turns out I was wrong. And hey, here I am. And we've also gotten emails from people who said, you know what? I really, really liked the calmer approach on, Talk Heathen. And it's because of that I felt comfortable engaging. And here I am. You have podcasts that are all over the spectrum. You have people who are just angry. You have people who are so nice that you just like Anthony Magnabosco. You just want to hug him. And the fact is, it takes all of us, man. And so there is no one size fits all approach. So when you're asking, how do you approach them? Listen to them. Find out what works for them. Number one, first and foremost, make sure that they want to have the conversation with you. Because if they don't want to, you've already lost.
Right.
But if they do, dude, explore. And if you come up with a really good strategy, call us and tell us about it.
Okay, I'll let you know. Just they hear that you disagree with them, and all of a sudden their defense mechanism turns on. They're like, what, you believe in the devil or something? Like, what the hell? Like, no, I did not say that.
Oh yeah, no, Christians buy in hard to the propaganda element. So they think that they understand what you mean when you say you're an atheist.
Right.
And it comes with a whole bunch of baggage that just is not anywhere near what actual atheists tend to think. One thing that you might consider doing is, if your goal is to have an ongoing conversation with people, and you're finding the word atheist is causing that initial association, you might consider talking about it in a different way. Oh, I'm not religious.
I don't believe.
Or, oh, I tried that for a while and it wasn't for me. Or in some way, still stick to your guns, of course, and express what you think. But if you're finding that the word is not helpful in this situation, that you're under no obligation to use it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I even say without. Sometimes I don't even use the word atheist. Like, I don't just bring it, hey, I'm atheist. Like, but what I'm saying is just the kind of main thing is, like, when you disagree with a key principle of their religious magic show, they just think like you're an evil person or something, and like their defense mechanism pops up. Like, just because I don't believe like the Virgin Mary existed, like, parthenogenesis doesn't exist, but whatever. Like, all of a sudden I said that, and like the conversation turned like, what? You don't believe that? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
That I kill people. It's like.
So here's what you do: you live a good life, and you volunteer, and you help people. I remember when I came out as an atheist in the community that I was in Southern California. I at the time I really enjoyed helping get food together to give to families who couldn't afford something on Thanksgiving or Christmas. I dressed as Santa and would go read to kids in different schools around Christmas time. I had a long calendar, and everyone, because I worked in a school district, I would make sure that I sang happy birthday to literally everyone on their birthday. And if I knew that they weren't going to get a chance to have one that year, we'd put together and we'd get a cake. The fact is when I came out as an atheist, the first thing they said is, no, you're not. You're a good person. and ultimately, I think
since I was maybe 22 or something.
But here's the thing, man. Is maybe the conversation with you isn't going to be the one that they're open to having, but knowing you and knowing that you're a good person may open that door for them to be able to question it, talk about it later.
Nice. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So thank you for calling in, man. And if you do have a michelada, have a second one on me, okay? Or for me.
Well, I was going to have one last night, but I turned to Jack Daniels, so whatever.
I can't get a good one in Texas, man. You got to do this for me.
Best drink ever is Newcastle. Newcastle Brown Ale is the best drink ever, but that's just my personal subjective opinion.
Oh, well, that's okay. All right, take it easy, man.
All right, cool. Take care.
All right. That's just way too much fun. Yeah. God, I wish that live chat was. I really, really hope that we do get people coming in and wanting to help mod on the live chat, because I love seeing it pass through. But also, you know what I noticed?
What's that?
I noticed that, like usual, we're well over 2,000 people watching and 329 upvotes. If you're enjoying this, smash that like button. And if you haven't subscribed already, hit subscribe, ring the little notification bell. We don't talk about it enough, but the fact is we have been sitting right around 77,000 subs for a while. If you want to give us a Christmas present, get us to 100,000 subscribers. We love that.
We will do something really fun.
What should we do?
I don't know, but it will be amazing.
Ooh, you know what? If we move to the Discord early, maybe people can give us suggestions.
Okay, guys, smash that like button, come to the Discord after the show, and give us ideas of what you want us to do on 100,000 subscribers.
Ooh, that sounds good. There are things that I can't think of something I wouldn't like. Like
we will start an OnlyFans.
I will whore myself.
I was kidding. Let's move on to the next caller.
Larry in Texas.
Hey, Larry.
You're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about?
Hey, Eric. Long time no talk to.
I know. It's been a bit.
I'm getting my Eric fix.
Larry?
Yes, Larry.
Larry! I miss you! Oh, Larry. Okay, so for those people who don't know Larry, I want to talk just a little bit about Larry, because Larry does not get the appreciation and support that Larry deserves. Larry came to the ACA and said, you know what? You need to get a lot of the back end stuff in order to make sure that the ACA continues running forward. And I cannot imagine how we could possibly be here if it wasn't for Larry's help. Not only that, but as a human being, Larry gives really good hugs. And I miss that too, Larry. I'm so happy to hear from you, man.
One of the couple of issues I'd like to talk about real quick.
Okay, sure. Shoot.
A lot of people have trouble with the concept, with the word or the name atheist. Mm-hmm. And, I prefer naturalist or secular humanist, because, it doesn't have a negative connotation. But the other thing is, you had an earlier discussion that was very good about consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's making the mistake that it's a physical thing. It's just a concept, more than anything else.
It's definitely a collection of things.
And it's not supernatural, of course, but it is just a concept. Like physics is a concept. And so the term consciousness is very confusing to people for that reason.
So while I, for the most part, agree, I think that the problem is it's just fuzzy definitions. It's people who want to engage in a topic but don't have the language for it, or think that they do have the language for it, but it turns out that it's getting in the way. And so often we find, especially on, I've seen on this show over and over and over, people want to have honest conversations about a thing, but sometimes the language is what's getting in the way. When we had that caller who was talking about knowledge, he was carrying with him that definition of knowledge that we didn't have, that we weren't operating with, and so we were talking past each other. But hopefully, we can have more that will spur better conversations. Is members only mode off?
Yeah. Vern took members only mode.
I hadn't heard the concept of knowledge before. It seemed a little bizarre to me.
It is one that it definitely takes a while to wrap your noggin around. And honestly, the more and more I engage with knowledge as a concept, the more I find that I'd rather use words like belief.
Yeah. Also, as far as the caller that we were talking to earlier, I'm pretty sure that he was of the opinion that anything that did not have mass was by definition supernatural. So I would totally take the track of possibly discussing consciousness as an abstract concept along the same lines as other abstract concepts like math. But I feel like he would be like, yeah, math is also supernatural because it doesn't have matter.
You're going to put me on a soapbox and we'll be here for the rest of the day.
Okay, let's not talk about math in front of Eric.
Hey, Larry.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, Larry.
Yeah, you take care of yourself, all right, man? It's really, really good to hear from you.
Yeah, pop in the crew chat sometime. We'll talk.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. I appreciate you, and keep up the good work. Goodbye.
Hey.
Larry, we couldn't be here without you. Thank you. You too.
Bye.
That just gave me the warm fuzzies.
You got excited there for a minute.
It's Larry. There are so many people who I miss who have been just integral. They're just so important in making sure that the ACA can keep going. And just due to us making sure that we're quarantining, we haven't gotten to see a lot of them. And I Larry, it's so good to hear your voice, man. It just is. So I know that we could continue on calls, but I actually really, really want to hear some people's suggestions about what humiliation we need to put ourselves through once we get to 100,000 subscribers.
I mean, yeah, let's jump into the Discord and hope people follow us over there.
Definitely. We've got the link down on the bottom third, tiny.cc/ACA Discord. Here's the thing. We can't run long because at 3:00 is the nonprofits and we want to support them. And we hope that at 3:00 you join the nonprofits because I know I'm going to be watching and it's exciting. We don't want to step on their toes. So if we're going to engage with the viewers and everyone at home, now's the time.
Yeah.
Hop over to Discord and we will see you there in just a minute. But in the meantime, are you ready for some love rings?
Let's do it.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Yay. So while we got those warm fuzzies, we want to share them with the crew. We have an amazing crew. The work that y'all put in. Oh, fine, Eric, not. I see what you did there.
Look, multiple cats today.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for all the hard work that you're doing. We sincerely appreciate it. We couldn't do it without you. And it's not fair that you deserve more recognition that you get than you get. And so we want to thank you publicly. We want to say you're amazing. For those of you who, well, whether you believe or not, if you're putting yourself in harm's way because of COVID, for our betterment, I'm really not going to, we're not going to split hairs on that.
Mm-hmm. You know who I want to shout out today?
Who?
Specifically?
Who?
Uber Eats and DoorDash and Grubhub drivers.
Oh my goodness!
Right?
Yes,
They are running this society right now.
They really are.
So if you drive for any of those food
Amazon.
delivery services or work for Amazon, first of all, I'm
UPS,
sorry.
or FedEx.
But also, yeah, you guys are keeping everything running. So thank you.
Yeah.
Also, we are moving into winter. We are seeing another spike in this pandemic. It's not over. It's not going to be over for a while still. In fact, we are hearing that it might get worse for a little bit, for a couple of months here. So make sure that you're still staying in small groups. Make sure that you're covering your face when you go outside. Make sure that you're washing your hands and, staying within a certain number of people and places for right now. We know it can be rough, but
and
I've had to look at his face for every day for the last 7 months now.
Poor you.
It's so hard.
Anyway, those of you who are putting yourselves out there, you're doing your job and we're doing ours. We want to make sure that we contribute to this being a safe place.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't believe, hey, I hope you join us on Discord because we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
And I love that we have people calling in from all over the world because this is a growing community and I absolutely love it. Thank you for being here and welcome if you're new and if you're returning and you're an old hand at this. Thank you for being here to make it a safe, warm, and open place for those people who are new. We need that.
Yeah.
But for those of you who do believe, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. See you next week.